Welcome back, lead listeners. Well, he's been close to the notorious cat before, and now he'll be even closer to alleged criminal tender don Vusimusi Matlala as they share the very same prison as you enter Pretoria ahead of their respective criminal trials. Now, facing unlawful firearm possession and obstruction of justice charges, suspended police sergeant Fannie Nkosi has been denied bail. And our journalist Tankiso Makhetha tells us the reasons why. Next.
Their arguments were that obviously he was tampering with evidence, considering the recovered dockets, which contained unprocessed evidence, which included fingerprints, CCTV footage, and witness statements linked to serious crimes. In one of the dockets, linked to hijacking in Atteridgeville, Nkosi was allegedly in possession of this docket since 2015. It had been signed out, but no progress was made on the case.
Later in our trending topic, could this be our very first winter without load shedding in a very long time? Touch wood. And finally, more than 1,500 people were detained by apartheid police following the Sharpeville Massacre. That's on this day in South African history.
To know when the next episode drops, hit the like, follow, and subscribe buttons on our YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast channels.
To Roby's Pointless Spy Quiz we go, and today's question is, to which beloved Josie suburb did Helen Zilla's mayoral campaign trail take her this week, where she played a game of tennis for the cameras? I'll give you that answer a little later. My name's Graeme, this is The Lead, and this is the South African story. Well, moving to our top story today, and we cross to the capital now for an update from our journalist Tankiso Makhetha, who's been in court this morning. Tank, glad to have you back on the show.
It has been quite some time, and I'm happy to be back. Thank you for having me, fam.
Yeah, man. Okay, remind our listeners about this raid in April on suspended Sergeant Fannie Nkosi's home. What was uncovered there? A stun grenade, I remember at the time, and sensitive case dockets?
Indeed. So this operation started on the 1st of April when the National Task Team investigating allegations made in the Madlanga Commission obtained a search and seizure warrant, and then they proceeded on the 2nd of April to raid Sergeant Nkosi's home. They found about 98 rounds of state-owned live ammunition, a stun grenade, 52,000 rands in cash, which he couldn't explain where it came from. And obviously they found the 6 dockets which contained evidence in them.
The suspended SAPS Organised Crime Unit members, of course, been known as a key witness at the Madlanga Commission. I mean, he's picked up all sorts of names, Tank, 007, Knight Rider, all sorts of, pop culture references, etc. But he wasn't just this, like lowly sort of mid-level police member. I mean, this is somebody that's been accused of being close to Vusimusi Matlala, sharing confidential documents, as a lot of this has come up before the commission. In terms of his reasoning to the authorities at the time of being in possession of these dockets, I mean, he didn't really have much to say, did he?
No, he couldn't justify why he had them, except to say that he was investigating these cases. And you must bear in mind that some of these cases are about 10 years old, if not older. And they've been basically kept, he hoarded them and kept them at his home. So nobody knew what was happening with these cases, and these matters were closed. Some of the dockets contained evidence that included videos, fingerprints, witness statements, photographs, so he basically derailed, or the state is alleging that he aimed to derail these investigations looking into CIT heists, hijackings, robberies, and so forth. So those are some of the most sensitive evidence that he was keeping away from being investigated.
Right. What did prosecutors sort of put down in terms of their arguments during bail proceedings in court? I mean, it's oftentimes just a good reminder to say that, in determining bail, it's not to determine whether or not someone's innocent or not, but it's more about, whether this person might be a potential flight risk in regards to, tampering with evidence or, ongoing witnesses. What did prosecutors, put on record here? What were their arguments?
Their argument was that obviously he was tampering with evidence, considering the recovered dockets, which contained unprocessed evidence, which included fingerprints, CCTV footage, and witness statements linked to serious crimes. In one of the dockets, linked to a 2015 hijacking in Attridgeville, Nkosi was allegedly in possession of this docket since 2015. It had been signed out, but no progress was made on the case. And also, the state also argued that this was just a fragment of the systemic obstruction rather than isolated misconduct, which suggested that Nkosi's actions may have allowed suspects in serious crimes to evade justice. He denied wrongdoing, previously stating that the charges are fabricated and politically motivated. And also one of the arguments that the state made was that he's a police officer who understands the system, and if he's granted bail, he may interfere with investigations, considering that he knows some of the witnesses in the dockets in which he kept, and also because he knows the system and how it works. Despite the fact that he may have been suspended and not have been allowed, or rather barred from entering his offices, but what the state insinuated is that he seems to have a long reach.
What was his demeanor in court? Obviously, us as South Africans have seen him quite a lot before the Matlala Commission, and perhaps he was more colourful then. But what type of figure did he strike now that he was in the criminally accused dock?
There are distinctive shades between the person we saw at the Matlala Commission and the person who was in the dock. Because the Matlala Commission is more of an inquiry rather than a criminal proceeding. But during his first appearance, I think this was on the 5th, if not the 6th of April. During his first appearance, he seemed quite relaxed. He was smiling. I don't think he took this matter very seriously. But as the proceedings unfolded and the state laid out its allegations against him, his demeanor started changing. The person that he was during his first appearance to the person that he was today are completely two different people. He seemed more annoyed and agitated and stressed, basically, in today's proceedings prior to his bail being denied, while magistrate Atandi Teledi read out her judgment. So I think he started understanding the gravity of the situation and the gravity of the problems that he's in right now.
Yeah, and I think perhaps probably had a bit of hope in the back of his mind that he'd be able to wiggle out and secure his freedom. What was his defense team's main arguments? What were their suggestions as to why he should be released? I think I remember reading in your reporting that they claimed that because he's suspended, that means he's no longer involved in active police work.
Indeed. They argue that he's not a flight risk. He owns 2 passports, which I believe have been surrendered to the state. And he's only been out of the country once, which was in 2012. He doesn't have any relatives outside the borders of South Africa. And that he doesn't have access to his work tools, which includes his laptop, which includes access to where he works or access to his office. He doesn't have access. He doesn't know. Well, he claimed that he doesn't know the witnesses in the matter, so he wouldn't try to jeopardize investigations. He doesn't have access to the evidence that was gathered because SAPS or the National Task Team had confiscated this evidence. But to counter that, the state argued that he has a propensity of accessing sensitive SAPS information, which includes these documents, which are central to this matter. So if he's granted bail, he may devise a plan of having access to the evidence, trying to get access to the witnesses and so forth.
Right. Do we know where he's going to be held in the meantime? Obviously, he's due to go on trial, so he may be held in a remand centre. Would he be at Vusimusi Matlala II as he enter Pretoria?
Indeed, he would, and that's where he's been for the past week or two. When he was initially arrested, he was being kept at a holding cell at a police station, but the court ordered that he be moved to Vusimusi. His defense advocate Dlali explained to the court that Sergeant Nkosi is quite prominent, basically, and he's a police officer, and he's worried about his safety in prison. So it was ruled that he be kept at the hospital wing of Vusimusi because he also suffers from diabetes. But the current magistrate who denied him bail, Magistrate Tankiso Makhetha, revoked that order and stated that she doesn't understand why he should be kept in a hospital wing because he will still have access to his medication even if he's kept in a remand in the remand section of Vusimusi. So that's where he's been for the past 2 weeks to answer your question. And yeah, that's where he's going to be kept until his matter's back on the roll. So his matter was postponed until 21st May for further investigations.
And then I thought, once this does sort of go to trial, I mean, he's facing a minimum 15-year sentence. That's pretty much what the prosecution had hinted at, right?
Before we even get to the trial stage, he's going to be punished enough because he still has to undergo a disciplinary hearing with SAPS after he was suspended about 4 days before he was arrested. So it's going to be a long road for him. It's going to be a very long road for him. I'm not sure if his patronage network is going to work for him to help him get out of prison or wiggle himself out of the situation. But he is indeed facing a minimum of 15 years in prison, specifically for the state-owned ammunition which was found in his possession or found at his home during the raid. Also, in addition to defeating the ends of justice with regards to the dockets that were in his possession as well. So yeah. It's going to be a lengthy road before trial resumes. But if and when he's convicted and sentenced, he's staring down a minimum of 15 years in jail.
And he hasn't indicated if he's going to be appealing bail at this stage. And tell me this: do you know if his case will be lumped in with any of the other Madlanga matters or connected matters that might end up to trial a lot sooner? You didn't get any wind of any of those, did you?
The National Prosecuting Authority spokesperson, Lumka Mahanjani, stated after Nkosi was denied bail that they're not discounting the possibilities of making more arrests in connection to this matter. And they're not discounting the fact that it may be related to other matters as well. So in the meantime, everything is just subject to further investigation, and we'll get an update as soon as they know.
Absolutely. Tank, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for the update on News 24's The Lead. I'm sure we'll catch up again soon. Stay safe and have a fantastic rest of your week.
Brother, thank you for having me.
You're listening to the latest edition of The Lead on News 24 with Graeme Rowenheimer. If you've got an opinion on what you've heard so far, drop us a short voice note on our WhatsApp hotline. That's 072 562 3179. Looking for a smarter weekend scroll? The Weekender is your ultimate guide to bold stories, sharp opinion, and a fresh lens on life in Mzansi. From exclusive interviews and powerful essays to wine picks, playlists, and pop culture gems, it's your perfect weekend read all in one place, landing every Saturday on News 24. Trending topic.
Shifting to our trending topic, well, could this be our very first winter without load shedding in a hell of a long time? Touch wood. Eskom reports, according to News 24's Lisa Stein, that it foresees no power cuts until August and that the grid is stable. Well, this would mark South Africa's very first load-shedding free winter since the year 2017. That's nearly a decade. In fact, Eskom's nearly a year without blackouts, with planned maintenance of aging power plants up and unforeseen breakdowns, well, down. So too is the power utilities diesel costs as an emergency backup fuel. Electricity Minister Nkosi Matlala told the very few media houses in attendance at today's briefing the following, quote-unquote, "You cannot praise a fish for swimming, so the fish is swimming. The fish is doing what the fish is meant to do, and this is good progress." Well, let's just hope this fish continues to swim well through winter, folks. That's enough about fish. Got any comments? Drop them below.
And finally,
Ending off now with On This Day in South African History, that's courtesy the SA History online database. Well, it's an event that shaped South African history for generations. It remains a key turning point in the early apartheid era. It's a staple of school history books. Well, on this day, the 22nd of April 1960, more than 1,500 people were detained across apartheid South Africa following the Sharpeville Massacre. Just days prior, 69 black South Africans protesting against past laws were shot and killed by police, with some 180 others wounded. Apartheid Pretoria immediately called a state of emergency, banning both the ANC and PAC, as the world's glare spurred the United Nations to condemn and act against the National Party state. This period, though, lasted until August 1960, with estimates of up to 18,000 people rounded up, and who knows how many people who went undocumented had died in custody as well. Still, as South Africa moved to republicanism, these events only served to drive any resistance to apartheid deeper underground, as the passive liberation struggle turned armed. And in Roby's Pointless Braai Quiz for today, our question has been, to which beloved Josie suburb did Helen Zille's mayoral campaign trail take her this week, where she happened to have played a game of tennis for the cameras? That was Linden. Well, when you're not cruising through the markets in Linden, you can also go check out the local tennis courts. You probably don't want to because it's full of weeds and overgrown. And it just doesn't look like a tennis court anymore. Zilla up until now has scuba dived in trenches, boated through road rivers. This week, though, she surfed up a tennis match at those courts in Linden, Randburg. But it's an old 1960s facility, and as I say, it's been left to rack and ruin. Locals want a lease from the municipality to fix the courts, but the Metro's property company, that's the JPC, is currently in talks to sell it. If this was your answer all along, congrats. You score the absolutely priceless prize of being the most informed person around the Braai Place. And around that Braai Place, I will see you this weekend. Just a reminder that the lead now comes out Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. We're no longer broadcasting on Tuesdays, but you can still get a hold of us by dropping us a comment below or sending us a rather formal email at thelead@24.com. In just over a year, The Lead has amassed 1.3 million listens and counting. Thanks so much for tuning in. We've told some incredible stories. Please note that each show has been quality checked by a senior member and or editor of News 24, and we generally adhere to the basic rules set up by the Press Ombudsman as well as the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Got one more edition this week? Look out for that. Until then, my name's Graeme Robenheimer. Stay warm, and as long as there's trusted news first, we'll have The Lead.